There you go. You're good.
This is in reference to question 1. Jared is a 5th grade boy who likes to make his classmates laugh by making sounds, witty comments, etc. Based on what we know about operant conditioning, as Woolfolk says, we are always actively operating on our environment, and we learn to behave in certain ways as we operate on our environment. Our deliberate actions are called operants. And Woolfolk also says that a reinforcer is any consequence or a stimulus that strengthens our behavior and increases our chances that this behavior will continue in the future. In our example, Jared's first consequence is everybody in the class laughs at Jared's behavior. So this would act as a positive reinforcer. And so in the future, Jared would continue to engage in this behavior as it helped him cause a disruption in the class, and that was something that would help. That would act as a stimulus to strengthen the behavior he was engaging in. The second consequence, if everyone ignores Jared's behavior, and there is a much stronger chance that he would not engage in the behavior in the future.
For question 2, it's about Mr. Lennox and his history class. So Mr. Lennox wants to have declarative knowledge for his students, so he really wants them to be able to understand topics and then be able to use their own personal experiences to really connect to what's happened in their lives and in history. So in terms of semantic memory, it's really important for Mr. Lennox to code images and words together to help the students store their knowledge into long-term memory. That will ultimately help them with their schema because they have a bunch of background knowledge and understanding. One of the ways that we talked about accessing semantic memory is to have images and words on a board or something for the students to create a concept map to really make connections from different words and topics, because again, it's important to include both when you're trying to solve for meaning.
And also to create the declarative knowledge, you could encourage episodic memory or create more experiences that would encourage episodic memory. For instance, as Woolfolk says, episodic memory is created from the information that's tied to a place and a time, and also the events that take place in your own life hold meaning. So one way we thought that could be encouraged in our classrooms is by having the students create their own timelines to see that events in history are similar to the events that happened in, or the highlights that the time, what would we call those? The critical events that may have taken, or milestone events, that's the word I'm looking for, that could happen in each of our lives. And also, since the strong emotions are tied up with the milestone memories that we may have throughout the course of our lives, these memories will be stored in the would be stored long term and help the students. That memory could then spark knowledge of a particular event, and he could tie that with the knowledge of facts and history by having them create a skit probably, and those memories could in the future help them learn the facts that Mr. Lennox would want to teach them.
And then the last question. I'm not entirely sure the building's here. I'm so sorry. That is so not helpful.
No, it's alright.
I'm not sure. Okay, and then our last question is about the 8th grade math teacher with a class of low-performing 8th graders who are starting to exhibit self-handicapping strategies. So they're finding ways to block their own success. So these students are showing signs of failure avoiding students. So they have a self-defeating attitude. Sometimes that comes from setting the bar too low or too high. Often you hear kids say things like, oh, I didn't study, so they don't expect to do well on tests anyways. So it's really important for this teacher to start building a growth mindset with her students, his or her students. So the teacher should be focusing more on the process than the actual product. So students should be thinking more about the work they're putting into this math block than the actual grades they're getting back. A way that the teacher could do that I've done in the past is only grading kids on if they're actually showing work. So the grade that they see is like, oh, I got 100% because I showed work on every single one of these math problems. And then you can have the real grade for them to see, or for their parents to see, or for just you to have and not put in the grade book of the actual content. But starting to build that up at the beginning will be really important. It's really important for the kids to experience success. So even if it's something small, make sure they have that feeling of, oh, this is what success feels like, so that they can build off of it and want to have that kind of feeling again. Find ways to make it more interesting for the students, so include their interests. That'll help them be motivated to continue to work and work harder. Model motivation for kids. I do that in my class when I talk about like classes I'm taking at SMU. I show them, oh, I'm really motivated to do well on this paper. I stayed up last night. I read this. I did that. And so modeling that for the kids will be really good. And again, having kids really understand that success is something that's attainable for all of them, changing their mindset from a fixed mindset to a growth mindset. It's not, I can't do well. It's not, I can't figure this out. It's now I can be excited to try harder on this problem. In terms of ability, have kids set goals for their own personal abilities. All the goals don't need to be set for the entire class. In terms of self-efficacy, having kids understand that failure is often in your control, but that also means success is in your control. So if you're going to sit there and say, oh, I didn't study, so I'm not going to do well, that was your control. You did that. So having students really understand, I made that choice. So when they finish taking a test or doing something, reflecting, how much work did I put into this test? How much work did I put into practicing for this test? So things like that will really help build their self-efficacy. Great.
Thank you.
Thank you.